Hi there, and welcome to the Polite Patchwork Placemat project tutorial. In this video we'll be covering how to make the Polite Patchwork Placemat. We'll only be making one of them in this video, but you can extend the instructions to make two of them. This pattern is by Serina Victoria and is designed for Sewers Club and was included in the August 2020 Sewers Club box. In the end of this video, we'll also be talking a little bit about the wine shade that was also included in the August 2020 box. Let's get started. So for the placemat, you'll need 6 different fabrics of at least 5 inches in width, even though the pattern does technically call for 1/6 of a yard for 6 different fabrics. And then you'll need half a yard of exterior G, which is the back of the placemat here, and then you'll need half a yard of fusible fleece to go inside of it. So let's get on to the cutting. If you purchase the August 2020 box, you'll have 6 different fabrics, just like so. And to cut these into your squares, first what you're going to want to do is just open it like this, okay? And before we start cutting it into the squares, we just want to straighten our fabric. So to do so, you would just take your ruler, straighten it on one side, and then once you do that, you can just take your ruler and measure 5 inches from that straightened side. Let's pretend like that's straight. And then you could just cut right across here, just like that. And then you'll have a strip of exactly 5 inches. Once you do that, you can open it up, you can trim off your salvage right here. And then what you're going to want to do is take your ruler, let's pretend like that salvage is cut off, and cut 4 5-inch squares all the way across. Just like that. So if you're making 2 of the placemats, you're going to need 4 of each color. And if you want to speed this up a little bit, you can actually, once you've straightened everything and ironed it all, you can actually just layer them on top and just cut your 5-inch squares like that. Just if you want to speed it up a little bit. So I'm going to go do that and we'll be right back. Okay, so once you've cut all your squares, you can kind of separate them out into your 2 placemats. So for each placemat, you're going to need 2 of each color if you're using 6 different fabrics. So I'm going to take these 2 of this one, 2 of this one, 2 of each of these, and need 2 more over here, just like that. And with these 2 piles, this pile would be for placemat 1, and this pile would be for placemat 2. Like I said earlier in the video, we're only going to be making 1 of the placemats, so I'm just going to toss these ones to the side for now. So the next thing you're going to want to do is you're going to want to take your squares and kind of figure out how you want to lay them out for your placemat. I'm going to follow the same layout as in the pattern. So once you got your placemat all laid out, what we're going to want to do next is actually join the rows. So this would be a row, this would be a row here, and this would be a row here. So to join the rows, what you're going to want to do is take your first 2 squares and just sew a 1/4 of an inch seam allowance there. And then I already have one all pinned up here, just to make things easier. So we sewed a 1/4 of an inch here, okay, and then fold it over to the next square, sew a 1/4 of an inch here, and then just fold it over again to the last square and sew a 1/4 of an inch there. And this will give you kind of like something like this where it's all attached just like that. And you're going to want to do that for all 3 rows. So I'm going to get that all done and we'll be right back. Okay, so I'm back from sewing our 3 rows here. As you can see, they're all joined together just like that. And before I came back on camera, I did something special on the back here. And we actually pressed our fabric and we pressed our seams in an alternating fashion. So you might notice up here is that we pressed all the seams to the right, okay, all to the right side. And on the second row, we pressed everything to the left side, alternating. And on the last row, we pressed everything to the right side again. And the reason we do that is so when we end up joining our rows together, I'll use these top 2 rows as an example. When we end up joining our rows together, if they're pressed to the same side, you're going to get this clumpiness in the intersection right here, here, and here. So what we do is we actually press them in an alternating directions. So what we can do is what is called nesting. Okay. And so we did that on all 3. And next thing to do is to actually join the rows. So when we join the rows, we're going to want to take our fabric. I'm going to flip these 2 over. And we're going to put right sides together just like that. And I'm just going to grab a pin here. And what we're going to want to do is, so look for your seam on it right here. And just kind of stick your needle right through that seam, and it should come out the other side. It should come through the seam on the other side as well. Okay, so basically what we're doing here is we're just kind of aligning our stitch on both sides. So when we end up joining everything together, you actually get these nice straight lines. You don't get an off shift as it goes downwards. Okay. So we're just going to do the other 2. So take your needle, go through the stitch, and come out the other side. Oops, put it down one more. And on this side, the needle should come through right in line with the stitch here. And we'll do the last one on camera too. Just like that. And you see on both sides, the needle comes through on the stitch. So that just shows that our lines are straight. So when we join everything, it actually comes out with these straight vertical lines across the whole placemat. So I'm going to get this sewn up and then we'll do the joining of the last row. Okay, so I'm back from joining our 2 top rows here. And as you can see, again on the back, after we did our sewing using a 1/4 inch seam allowance, we actually pressed everything into one direction. So we actually pressed everything upwards, as you can see. So just press it all upwards. And again, that's just because we want everything to feel nice and flat. It's not really bulky or anything. It's not really hard in these intersections. It's nice and smooth. All the lines are nicely lined up because of the nesting we did here. And if you actually look here, you can see your seam is actually straight all the way across through the joint of the 2 rows. Okay, so let's flip this back over. And you're essentially going to do the same thing for the last row. And you're just going to do right sides together like so. And just take some pins and go through the seam and come out the other end of the seam. And again, on the back, you'll see that the needle comes through where the seam is. And you're just going to want to do that on all 3 of them, just like so. 1 and 2. Perfect. And again, just make sure the direction of the seam is pressed in the opposite direction. So here we have it going this way. On this side we have it going this way. And again, that's just so we can do what's called nesting. So our seams come straight and we don't have any bumpiness in the intersections of the squares. So I'm going to get that all sewn and we'll be right back. Okay, so I am back with our last row attached. Again, after we sewed, we just pressed everything this way. And if you actually got the August 2020 box with the extra add-on notion, you actually got a bottle of breast press. And if you use that, it will make your pressing a lot nicer and a lot crisper. And it will look better. So, next thing we're going to do here is we're actually going to get moving on the fusible and the backing. So the pattern asks you to cut a piece of 14 inches by 18 and a half of the fusible fleece. You may have to adjust that size depending how precise you were with your half-inch seams. If you were dead on, then 14 by 18 and a half is going to be perfect. But if you are slightly too big or slightly too small, you may have to adjust the size of your fusible accordingly. So what we're going to do here is we're essentially just going to line ours up. Ours is basically perfect. Okay, and you're just going to want to fuse that. And then once you fuse that, we're going to grab our backing next. Okay, and the pattern again tells you to cut 14 by 18 and a half, but I suggest that you actually cut it a little bit bigger just to make it a little bit easier when you end up sewing it to this. Like that, your fabric can move around a bit and you don't have to be as careful and stuff. So what we're going to do is we're going to leave it the way it is with this size here. It's a little bit bigger than 14 by 18 and a half, but that's okay. And then the next thing we're going to do is we're going to put our right sides together, just like so. And then we're just going to sew all the way around our outside here using a 1/4 of an inch seam allowance. And then we're just going to leave an opening at the top here. I would say 3 to 4 inches. You can leave it a little bigger. If you want to make it a little smaller, then go ahead. But we're going to leave 3 to 4 inches at the top open just so we can inside out it later. So I'm going to get this fused together and I'm going to sew all the way around, leave my opening, and I'll be right back. Okay, so we're back from fusing our fusible to our front side. And we also did our sewing around the edge of the placemat onto the backing with right sides together. So you might already notice that we trimmed 2 of the sides already. Okay, so all you really want to do, take a ruler, line it up, and just cut off the excess. Okay, and that's what we did up here. And on the side that you have your opening, your 3-inch or 4-inch opening, whatever you left, you're going to want to do something a little special. So what you're going to want to do is just essentially leave the excess where the opening is. So we're going to leave this piece and we're going to trim off this piece and we're going to trim off this piece, okay, to the same size like we did down here, but over here, just like that. And we're just going to leave this little like flap type thing, and you can do that we just cut, use some scissors, just cut down right where the opening starts and ends, and we're just going to cut 2 sides. So we're going to do that and we'll be right back. Okay, so we're back from trimming the excess purple around the edges, And what we already decided to do is we just trimmed the excess off some of these corners here. So you might notice that we just trimmed across. It used to be pointy and now it's slanted. When you do that, we just to make the corners of the placemat a little bit nicer, we just want to trim the excess. And when you do so, just be sure you don't cut into your seam. Just cut kind of close to it, but just be careful there. And you might also notice we left our little flap thing, and yeah, so we're ready to turn this inside out. So let's do that. Okay, so all I'm going to do is put my hand in here, kind of get to the opposite corner here, and then we're just going to pull, and just be gentle. You don't want to rip anything and pull too much anywhere. Just be nice and gentle with it. Okay, so we flipped it inside out, and you may have noticed in that little clip there that I took some scissors and I just stuck the scissors inside, and I just poked at the corners just to straighten them a little bit, just to get those nice crisp corners. And I did that on all four just to make them look a little nicer. So next thing you're going to do is you're just going to want to take this to the iron and just press the whole thing. And when you do, just make sure this is nicely folded in like that, and just press it like that. And yeah, I'm gonna go do that, and we'll be right back. Okay, so we have our placemat nicely pressed, and we're just about done. So we still have this little opening, and like I said before, we pressed it with it kind of rounded inwards, just like that. And last but not least, we're going to do a top stitch about 1/4 of an inch all the way around, and that's going to close our hole. And yeah, so all the way around, just do a top stitch at 1/4 of an inch. And then after that, if you want, if you want to do something special, you're more than welcome to do some sort of quilting on top of it, whatever you like. So I'm just going to do the top stitch, and we'll be back with the finished placemat. Okay, and we're done our top stitch. Okay, and just like that, we are done our placemat. And like I said before, if you want to do something fancy and you want to do quilt the top of it or something, you're more than welcome to do that. And obviously, if you want it, the pattern does say to make 2 of them, and you could just extend these steps to make the second one. And that's it for the placemat. So let's move on to talking about the wine shade if you got the August 2020 box. Alright, so what we're going to be making, just to show you first, is these little wine shades, okay? So they go in a wine glass, and you can put a little candle in the inside, and it goes great with your placemats. You can put it in the middle for dinner, get some nice mood lighting, or whatever you're going for. So we're going to make this little thing, okay? So if you purchase the August 2020 box, you have the fabric and you have the interfacing. And the interfacing actually has a template already on it, which makes it very easy to do this. So what you first want to do, just iron your fabric just to make things a little bit easier. And then what you're going to want to do is you're going to want to put these together like so, and make sure the sticky side is upwards facing you. So the sticky side should not be touching the fabric, it should be facing you. Okay, so if at any point you get confused, there is instructions on these, so you're more than welcome to follow those instead of listening to me. So what we're going to do is, this does make 2 wine shades, so if you're only making one, you might want to cut this first and then do these steps, but we're going to make both of them. So what you're going to do is, you might notice on here there are these little tiny dots, okay, and what you're going to want to do is sew from dot on the solid line all the way to the other dot, okay, and same on this side, dots all along the solid line to the other dot. Okay, you don't want to sew between this dot and this dot, you just want to leave this open. Okay, don't sew here. And it's the same here. Okay, leave that open. And then once you do that, you can cut around this. Just stay outside the dashed line. And yeah, so we're going to do that and we'll be right back. Alright, so like I said, we sewed across the solid line up till the dots, and we have our little openings on both ends here. And then we just cut it out just outside the dashed line, just like so. So the next thing we are going to do is we're going to flip the whole thing inside out, just like so. I have one done here already. So we flipped it inside out, and then what you want to do is you just want to finger press everything, because if you iron it right now, you're going to have some problems. So you just want to finger press everything nice and flat. You know, make sure on the edges where your seam is, just make sure the seam is out. And then on these openings, you're just going to want to fold it in, and then fold the interfacing in as well, up till that solid, right along that solid line. And you're going to do the same thing here. Just going to do something like that. And when you do inside out it, just be very, very gentle, because you don't want to rip the interfacing. The interfacing is really, really thin, and you just got to be very careful when you try to inside out it. Alright, so once you do that on both your wine shades and have everything nice and finger pressed like so, make sure your corners are nice and stuff like that, and you're happy with it, you're going to finally take this to the iron and you're going to press it, and that's just going to fuse the interfacing to the fabric finally. And then after that, what you're going to do is you're just going to fold this in, pretend that this is fused already. You're just going to fold this in right sides together. It's a little messy because it's not actually sewn. And you're going to sew across here using about 1/4 inch seam allowance. You don't have to be very precise about it. And yeah, so I'm going to get that done, and then all we have to do is really inside out it, but I'll show you that in a second. Alright, so we pressed and sewed our seam, and then what we did is, then after we sewed, we just pressed our seam open just to give a more flatter look. And all we literally have left to do is just flip it inside out, and it's done. So let's grab our wine glass over here. We just plop that on there just like that, and we can even grab our placemat here too, and then boom, just like that, you got a beautiful little wine shade that you can stick a little candle in it, and yeah, and that's it. And just like that, our Polite Patchwork Placemat is complete, and we also have this beautiful wine shade to complement our little dinner set. If you did purchase this pattern separately, and it didn't come in the August 2020 box, then I highly recommend you subscribe to Sewers Club. Comes with lots of fun stuff, lots of fun projects and stuff like that. And if you're not subscribed, you can do so at sewersclub.com. Thanks for watching. Bye-bye.